you have ever done crystal meth? Apparently one of you. Okay, now how many of you would do it if it were legal? Right, exactly. Nobody's hands changed. So this is similar to how other drugs such as alcohol, nicotine, or marijuana, which are legal now, like the legality of the drug doesn't affect a person's decision on whether or not they begin using it, but rather whether they believe the pros of the drug outweigh the cons. It's for this reason underage use of alcohol and marijuana is so prevalent, because the fact that they are illegal for people under 21 use doesn't stop young people from abusing these substances.
Sorry, hang on.
Today I'll be talking about the topic of legalization of all drugs for recreational use. Many people are vehemently opposed to the legalization of drugs, but in recent years, support of this idea has skyrocketed. In this speech, I'll be advocating for the legalization of all drugs, including narcotics, depressants, stimulants, hallucinogens, and steroids, for recreational and medical use by all people over the age of 21. This is because regulating drugs would make them safer for those who use them anyways, like Sean. Many non-violent inmates would be released, saving America billions of taxpayer dollars, and drugs with medicinal properties would be more readily available. By legalizing these drugs, the government will be able to heavily regulate them for purity standards, greatly reducing the number of deaths by overdose. Many drugs that are sold today are commonly laced with the drug fentanyl, which according to the CDC is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. And this is because fentanyl is very cheap to produce and makes these street drugs even more addictive than they already are. Fentanyl can be linked to most drug overdoses in the US because of its potency and how common it has become. If drugs were legalized and distributed only through the close supervision of a government agency that ensured that they met certain purity standards, this would greatly reduce the number of overdoses and possibly eliminate overdoses due to fentanyl. Another reason for legalization is fewer inmates in prisons, as well as a high sin tax on the newly legalized drugs. This will greatly benefit government programs, as well as lower taxes for everyday Americans. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, more than 45% of people in America's prisons today are incarcerated for drug-related offenses. That is 28% or 46,000 inmates more than the next highest reason for imprisonment, which is weapons charges. With an average cost of $33,275 per inmate per year, all people incarcerated for drug-related crimes cost the government about $2.5 billion per year. By legalizing all drugs, along with placing a heavy tax on the sale of these drugs, the government would have an increase in revenue. This extra money could be put towards drug education and addiction rehabilitation programs, which would ultimately decrease drug use. There are many medicinal benefits to some drugs that are currently illegal. Probably the most well-known illegal drug that has medical benefits is THC. And the benefits of THC range from simple pain reduction all the way to suppressing seizures. And it is these benefits that have led to the legalization of marijuana, at least in a medical capacity in many states. And these include here in Michigan, where marijuana was recently legalized for recreational use. A much less known medical benefit of drugs that are currently illegal is the possibility of using certain hallucinogens to treat PTSD and other mental disorders. For example, a study was done by well-known psychologist Roland Griffiths on the effects of a psychedelic experience had on anxiety and depression of patients with life-threatening cancer. The results of the study showed that this experience greatly reduced both anxiety and depression of the patients and had them focus more on their quality of life rather than engaging in aggressive treatments. If all drugs were legalized, it would make studying any medicinal properties that they may have much easier and possibly lead to more medical breakthroughs such as this one. Many people would argue that the legalization of all drugs would result in an extreme spike in use of narcotics. However, this is untrue, as we saw in our survey, that those already using hard drugs would be some of the only ones to purchase them after legalization. Also, because of all the money saved through the clearing out of prisons and the new tax revenue, the government would be able to implement anti-drug education campaigns, as well as new rehab programs to decrease drug use. Rather than punishing those who are already addicted to hard drugs such as heroin, the government would be able to get them effective rehab and treatment, and this would lead to a decrease in drug users rather than an increase. Another argument often used by those opposed to legalization is that kids and young adults would use more drugs, and I'm sure based on your own personal experiences, many of you already know that the use of nicotine, marijuana, and alcohol is extremely prevalent in America's underage population. For example, 35% of high school seniors have used marijuana in the past year, and this shows that just making a substance illegal for them to use doesn't prevent kids from using it. However, according to the Recovery Village, a rehab center that takes part in extensive research of drug use in teens, young people's use of other much more unsafe drugs, such as cocaine or amphetamines, is extremely low. This is because of effective drug education programs that are already in effect and would benefit even more from the increase in revenue drug legalization would give them. This stark difference in use between drugs that are seen as safe and those that are dangerous is not because the drugs themselves are illegal to use, but rather the perceptions young people have from being educated of the harmful effects of hard drugs. The legalization of all drugs for recreational use would make it safer to do drugs for those who already do them anyways, benefit the general public through more government tax revenue, decrease taxes for the average person, provide a solution for the country's prison overcrowding issues, and lead to more medical research on the medicinal properties of drugs. These benefits heavily outweigh any cons that may come from the legalization of these drugs and should lead to the end of the legal drugs